Howdy folks, I'm making a little video about this project because there's a lot of different masonry aspects involved with it. We're going to have some brick work, some block work, some concrete repair, some parging, some structural grouting, all kinds of exciting things happening here today. But real quick, little background on masonry. I'll be using terms like concrete, cement, and mortar. A lot of people get it mixed up. Cement is really the base product. Cement's just Portland cement. Mortar is Portland cement plus sand. Typically 4 parts sand, 1 part mortar, and concrete is sand, cement, and aggregate or stone. So when you hear those terms used, you'll understand what they are. A lot of times you go to Lowe's and or Home Depot or a place like that, and they have Quikrete. Quickrete's pretty much got a lock on that sort of thing, but they'll sell this fancy crap, but really pretty much all of it is a mixture of those 3 things, plus some kind of little additive, which is like a bonding agent or something. The porch had sunk. Over time, the water running from the gutter caused this little situation here, so the porch sunk down. They had patched it on the front with some mortar. I chipped that out because that will interfere with the closing of it if I ever get that far. And it's caused this to be a bit out of level. I think you can see it right there. But my hope is once I get that re-secured, it will just simply close that gap up, and I'll just have a slight crack to fix and replace a couple bricks. The previous owner, their attempt to fix this was a carpet over top of it, or at least that was their attempt to hide it from the buyer. So if you can see, we got a pretty gruesome crack here. What I'm doing in this coal mine / Buffalo Bill torture room. Well, the porch on the house has collapsed. The foundation is sinking. Part of the reason I got this house so cheap, maybe not just the bats. So what I'm going to be doing is reinforcing the porch below, and on part of it I'm going to have to actually lift it up to get it back in the place it's supposed to be. I don't know how useful this will be to the majority of my viewers, but it's a real pain in the ass, and it's going to cost me a lot of money. It's going to be a lot of work, and all it's going to do is put my porch back where it's supposed to be, so no one's even going to know that I did it. So maybe I'm just doing a video because I like attention. I don't know, but there might also be some useful tips in it for you. I don't know if you can see here, it's these old timber trusses that held it up, and right here at this end where the gutter was leaking for a long time, it sank. I did my best to try the cheap and easy way. I thought maybe if I just jack that corner up and reinforce it, it would be able to bring the porch up to size. But if you can see these joists along here, they should look like that, sitting there flush on top. But because they were so rotten, as I jacked it up, it just actually pushed right through the wood. Actually, I had to add that to the bottle jack. That's an 8-ton bottle jack. It was a little terrifying. You just heard creaking and crunching. I thought the porch was going to collapse on my head. But it was actually just going straight into the wood. So what I'm going to need to do is reinforce that wood with some new pressure treated lumber. Put some braces underneath of it, and then slowly jack it up. Again, I got it up 2 inches, but it made no difference because the joists holding the concrete above didn't actually move. Another thing I had to do, I had to clean all this. I cleaned all this crap out that was over here. This actually was just their garbage room for a while. But I don't want to take all this dirt out for a couple reasons. Mainly, I'm lazy, and 2, if that is crumbling on the other side, this dirt will actually hold that wall, so it's actually putting pressure against that wall, that back wall, and I would hate to take it out. But instead of taking that out, because I do need an even level surface for which to support the roof, I decided I'm going to put a footer right here, put a CMU wall about 3 or 4 courses high, level that dirt out, let it settle, compact it as best I can, and then run some footers lengthwise and support off of that. So for now, we gotta pour some concrete. This is what's called an earth form. This is old school poor people form right here. You just dig the dirt out where you want the concrete to be, and kaplow. Alright, the holes in your block are what's called cores. So what I want is this rebar to come up from the concrete into a center of a core, so I can, I'll pour the footer, put the block over top of it, you get up a few courses, then you pour concrete, so that way you have a good, strong, solid wall. The edge is pretty easy because you know where the core is going to be. I'm going to take a stake. Well done, please. The stake serves two purposes. One, it keeps it up at a 90, and two, I'll tap it in here, tap it in. I'll take some wire, and what it's going to do, it'll hold it up off the dirt. So, because I want the rebar to go through the center of the concrete, not laying at the bottom. Then it serves no purpose. Because you have to measure out to make sure that this is going to hit the center of a block. You can cheat, and since this is just a small wall, lay out your block wall dry, and then measure where it's going to be, which is what I did. You want your wire really tight. Keep your rebar in place till that concrete cures. So that's what I got. You can't see it very well, but I got two that'll go in the center, one on either side, so I'll have two solid cores full of rebar on either side. So that should be more than enough to level that dirt out and keep it strong and in place. I'm using standard Quickcrete. I'm going to load a lot of it in the basement now, so I don't have to keep running back and forth. There's slightly more to mixing concrete than simply just putting water on it. Alright, you want to make a mound all the way to one side of the wheelbarrow. And then you make a puddle on the other side. And then you just pull it from the front into your puddle. Mixy mix mix. Basically you're making that mound, pulling it to the opposite side and repeating the process till your concrete is mixed. And now I simply just pull it back the other way. Alright, this setup's a bit of a pain in the ass because this is my water line, and I don't want to, normally I could just dump my wheelbarrow straight in there, but I don't want to risk breaking my water line. Alright, you're going to want to consolidate your concrete. Normally they have something that looks just like a big dildo, really, and you jam it in there, but I don't have one of those, but I got a hammer drill and I just taped up the bit, so you put it in there, you can watch the concrete start to flow around. Now what that does, oh shit. Now what that does is it vibrates inside the concrete so it gets all the air pockets and voids out of it. Pull up on your rebar a little bit to make sure it's not in the ground, that it's inside the concrete. It doesn't need to be perfect, but you want it close to level. So when you do your first course of block. I got it finished out pretty well, but I'm going to give it just the slightest broom finish. I want to make sure the surface is good and rough for when I get so it bonds better with the mortar. Well, that's pretty much that for now. We'll let that guy set up overnight. Then it's going to be time to rock that block. Before I get going, I did a little dry fit. This is what you can do through any little masonry project. They're not straight or anything like that. I just wanted to see the sizing, make sure it'd work out the way I wanted it to. You'll notice the rebar hits the center of the core. It's a bit close call on that one, but I still got it. Yeah, so dry fit it. I'll mark a level line on either side, and we're ready to rock-a-locka. Mortar kind of the same way you do the concrete. You want to pile it all to one side. You leave your water at one end, and you pull your mortar into it. That way you're not mixing a ton at one time. It's a bit thick. depending on what you're doing is your thickness. If you're parging, but it sticks to the trowel, usually good. Typically, I'd run a big. I'd run a story pole up each side. That's basically a level board with markings on it, the height of the block and the course. That way, you can run a string line across it, and you can run the front point of each block to it, and then just level the outside. But given the space I'm in and that I don't really care how pretty it is, I'm just gonna. I cut this to length, so I'm gonna use this as reference. And my footer is square, so I keep that on the front edge of my footer. And then I'll just level it up as I go. I'm going to drop a pretty big fat bed for the first one. I'm not going to set them, I'm just going to rest them in place. Oh, lost it. This is how you cut a block. Saws, but you can just cut a block by chipping at it. And if you kerf it well, should give you a nice, pretty decent cut. Again, I'm doing all this kind of haphazardly because I'm stuck down here in this cave. But I'm trying to create a bond beam, really. Typically there'd be a valley in the block. But what this does, I'll connect it to the clips on the wall. Connect it to the rebar coming up out of the concrete. So that way when I put the concrete in, it's a good, strong, solid retaining wall. The rebarred cores I'm going to go ahead and fill up with concrete, pouring it kind of wet. Typically I let the mortar set up a little more, but I'm only up 3 courses. So my wall's all dried and cured. It's been about a week. Alright dudes, well, I got my wall built, and I also backfilled this to make it level. So that way when I put my supports in, it's more of a level surface, which is nice. Also, while I was down there moving the dirt around, I found a bunch of cool stuff. Found a bunch of old jars. These are kind of neat. This jar is full of beans. I always said this house ain't worth a jar of beans, but then I found an old jar of beans, and I was like, damn, that's a cool jar. So I changed my mind about the bean thing. I also found a bunch of flower pots, found a ton of flower pots. Yeah, look at all these flower pots I got. Look at all of them. I already put a plant in that one. How about that? Look at that, found an old bowling pin in there too. Look at that. Look at all the flower pots in another jar. Don't be fooled by the pots that I got. I'm still loot from the block. So through here, this bit here, I need to put a piece of plywood here because this wood's rotting out. And then on either side of these, the joists, I'm gonna sister in some new wood, so hopefully that'll keep it steady for a couple more years. I'm not entirely certain, but this may be some of the dumbest shit I've ever done. But I guess I got an 8-ton bottle jack. I had a little situation in traffic courts. I don't really have the cash right now to buy the lumber I need. So, but I do have this old 4x4 post, some other pressure treated lumber. So my plan now is see if I can just at least get it lifted into place. Support it with the 4x4 and the lumber I have. Might even leave the jack in there for a while, and then do a couple more jobs, get the cash together, and then get the proper amount of lumber. I need probably a couple $100, maybe. Just as kind of a depressing fix, because you do it, you fix it, and it just looks like it was supposed to be level in the first place. So it's not like a cool renovation to a bathroom or something like that, but still important. But anyway, let's see if this works. Is I ended up taking a 4x4 here. I knocked this corner out and I put a 8-ton jack, and I was able to lift this corner up.
the brickwork. So I'm gonna have a slight gap here. I lifted from underneath. I brought the slab itself up a tiny bit. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to secure this little bit here with some, it's called non-shrink grout. But we'll get into that in a bit. And then I'll parge all the rest of this and then patch the crack in the concrete, and hopefully it'll look like it's good as new. So I got some of these composite shims. These will remain in there, but what's going to be the main structural support will be the grout that I install. For the structural bit, I'm using Lowe's sells a product called anchoring cement. It's actually non-shrink grout if you go to a real place. It's a very different mix. You can get the stuff real wet. Like, let's say you drill a hole and you want to put a post in other concrete. You just pour that in there, and when it dries, it expands a little bit. But on a vertical like this, you mix it somewhat dry. With this stuff here, don't mix up too much because it dries really fast. And for this, you don't get it too wet because you want to be able to pack it in the vertical without it oozing out. Alright, while my grout sets up on the other side, I popped out the back side of that course of bricks, the bottom course that got all cracked up there. I'm only short a couple bricks. Most of the bricks that fell off are still here. So what I'm going to do is I just take my masonry hammer, and the old mortar comes off quite easily. Just be careful when you do it not to hit your brick and chip it up too bad. It's kind of a bitch, but you got to get it down as clean to the concrete as possible. Alright, I did a dry fit, so I know everything's going to fit, everything's clear, and everything's got space to go. So now it's time to mix up my mortar. For this bit right here, as you can see, this kind of dropped down here, so this is lower. So it's kind of my naive plan to lift this side, leave it supported, and then rebuild it from up underneath. So I let it cure overnight, so in theory, if I did this right, it should stay. So. Alright, before I go about patching this corner right here, if you can see this core that's empty all the way down, I want to fill that up with concrete. I want to put a rebar in it, but I'm a little curious how far down the hole goes. I don't believe it's only that far. we have two things going on here. We're about to fill this crack in. This is my niece Ivy. She'll be using some of this backer rod here, peel and stick backer rod. Some boys causing shenanigans. Yeah, the peel and stick backer rod will keep you from able to use as much concrete or your concrete falling through, and we go to do this little patch here. What do you say about that, Ivy?
Yes.
For this type of topping mix here, I'm going to go, typically I just go straight Portland, but it's going to be a little bit dark. So I have something here marked on the inside so I know I got the same amount. So I'm going to go 2 parts Portland, 1 part sand, because I want a little bit of grit in it so it looks like the concrete. So it's important that your mix is consistent, or your color will look all jacked up and everyone will laugh at you. All the neighbors will come over and they'll be like, look at his concrete, what a dick. First step, one, the concrete should be wet, which it is wet. Most things are around me. You take this and you put that on there, and on either side of this crack, I'm going to paint this bonding agent. Just about 3 inches along each side of the crack. That's my Portland sand and bonding agent. Alright dudes, here's what it's all about. Is you want to float it up similarly to like doing drywall, where you're floating it out a little bit. My final little tip is take a wet broom and just try to blend it in best as possible. Well, I waited a bit long, so it's going to be harder than it has to be, but one thing I like to do when I'm done is take a piece of cinder block and rub it. Here's that crack now. Not too bad. You can see this is where it was. You still barely see it, but kiss my ass. I still got to clean my brick. I'm going to just use some mercuric acid and it'll take the extra mortar off. Patch that. That's not a great patch. You can see it. Same there, but my corner looks alright. How you doing?
Alright, how are you?
Not too bad. So yeah, we got that straightened out. Like I said, with the color of the concrete, if you don't get your mix consistent, you'll be able to see it, and that's what happened right there. But other than that, we're straight and on the level, which I'm pretty pleased about. No one will ever know.